What's up, everybody? The Redneck Republican back again for another video. It's been a little while. I had a lot of stuff going on, and I really didn't have a good time to post a video because I knew as soon as I did, I was going to have more stuff that were going to come up soon after that. So that's why I just figured I'd wait until my plate was pretty clear. So the first thing I want to talk about that happened a while ago at this point, but still want to talk about it, was the passing of Senator Lindsey Graham. It definitely comes as a shock to me, and of course, everybody. Especially with everything going on with Mitch McConnell. If any senator was going to pass away, you thought it was going to be him. You wasn't going to expect it to be Lindsey Graham. So that was definitely a little, really shocking. But I disagreed with him on many things, but I agreed with him every once in a while. So, anytime someone dies, unless you're like a rapist or a murderer, I'm gonna be sad about it. So, and his family has my condolences. And speaking of family, his younger sister Darlene has been appointed to fill out the rest of his term. A lot of people have a problem with that. Me personally, I don't mind it, as long as she's only going to be the caretaker of it until a new person is elected, and then they take the seat. If that's the case, that's fine. But if she ends up and goes and runs for it, like the full term for the next 6 years and gets it, I'm not a big fan of that, because that just, because if she runs, she's going to have the incumbency advantage, right? And it's just the fact that, a U.S. Senate seat is not something to be inherited, and that's basically what would be happening. She would basically be inheriting that seat. So, I understand the problems a lot of people have with that. So, but we'll see. I know Ralph Norman has entered the race for that. Big fan of him. He is a little bit older, but I can overlook that. I think he'd be a great senator for at least one term, and until we can get someone new. I was really hoping Nikki Haley would run. I would love if Nikki Haley would run for that, but she said she's not interested, so, what are you going to do? And then on the main Senate, to be honest, I can't remember where we were at in the main Senate race in the last video I posted, but Graham Plattner, he's dropped out. You've got a decent amount of Democrats, vying to replace him. The one who's, I think, is going to be the runaway to get it is Troy Jackson, who I think he was the Speaker of the Maine House, or he's been in politics in Maine for a long time. Very well known guy. Definitely is going to have the establishment backing and all that from up there. So not really too much of a surprise. Some of you may have seen that transgender dude on that one debate. And honestly, I kind of feel bad for that guy, because he seems like a nice enough dude. But he's getting reamed on social media. At the end of the day, he's got issues, obviously. It's like, you're a dude, you're not a woman, right? But he seems like a nice enough guy, and I do kind of feel bad for the absolute pummeling he's taken on social media after that debate. But anyway, so let's get started talking about me. I had a very busy week last week. Tuesday, I went to the Ballard signature drop-off. I'm free to go. Robbie Slaughter texted me about it. And I asked him, is there going to be a meet and greet with the mayor, because I wanted to meet Ballard. And he said that there should be. And then, some of you may have known, I bought Greg Ballard's book, and I've been reading it. I haven't read it in a few days. I need to get back on that. But I also wanted to see if he could autograph the book, and Robbie said he probably would. So anyway, I went there, and I'd also never been to the State House before, so that was also a plus, being able to see the State House for the first time. And I'll tell you what, I ran into the greatest stroke of luck I feel like I probably ever could have ran into. Of course, I get up there. I don't know where in the heck I'm supposed to go to enter this building. Well, anyway, I'm in the parking lot. I see this guy getting out of his car. Who is it but freaking Representative Garrett Bascom, who's the state rep for where my farm is at down in Switzerland County. So I was like, hey, what's up, man, and all that. And then, he asked me what I was doing up there. I told him, and he was kind enough to show me around and show me where I was, supposed to be going. So that was pretty awesome and pretty lucky for me to run into him of all people. But anyway, the Ballard event was nice. Got to meet a few people. Talked to a few people. I just fellow audience members like myself, obviously. I got to meet one guy who was actually from down in Canaan, which is only about 15 minutes from me, so that was kind of neat. But anyway, once the event started, first off, before the event started, eventually Ballard got there, and then he was talking with someone, and then once he was done, I introduced myself and all that, and he's a real nice guy, and he did autograph the book, which was awesome. And later on at the end, I got a picture with him, which was awesome. But yeah, the event went well. Nathan Gotch, Robbie Slaughter, Greg Ballard, all did great. Nathan had a great speech. Ballard had a great speech. Yeah, it was pretty. 40,000 signatures. That's not something to scoff at. That's not at all. And after the event, Nathan Gotch, the campaign manager, and Joe Garrison, the comms director, both came up to me and shook my hand, which I thought was pretty cool. Both really nice guys. So yeah, I had an enjoyable time at that event. And of course, at that time, I was certainly leaning Ballard because I still had concerns about Max Engling that had not yet been addressed. Well, that evening I posted the picture of Ballard and me on Facebook, and then a friend of mine, he's a big Max Engling guy, he posted a picture of one of these I back Max buttons as a reply. And I was like, hey dude, I'm perfectly happy to support Max, but I've just got some concerns with him that I need to talk to them about. And then a friend of mine actually, I'll say his name, I guess it was Josh Young. Josh, he posted an invite thing to Max's I think it was called the General Election Campaign Kickoff or something like that. It was like a fundraiser and stuff, and I was like, well, that's perfect. I was like, it was a chance for me to get to it was a chance for me to get to meet Max. And the crazy thing was actually that very next night, so it was a quick turnaround, right? But anyway, so I decided I'd go to that, and I'll tell you what, that was a very, very what's the good word? Not enjoyable. It was a very enjoyable event, I will say. I was one of the first ones there. With me being, an hour and a half away, I wanted to give myself plenty of time to get up there. And I got to meet a few people who I've, seen on social media and interacted with many times. That was cool. Got to meet Max, obviously. Got to discuss my concerns with him. And by the end of it, I told him he had my vote. He had quelled my concerns good enough that I feel comfortable giving him a vote in November. Now, could that change from here in November? Possibly. I don't know what's gonna do. Something crazy might come out about Maxine. I don't know. I doubt it. I doubt it will change. But at the end of the day, Greg Ballard is right there, and I very much like Greg Ballard as a candidate. So if something crazy were to happen and come out about Max, then I would have no problem switching to Ballard. But I do not expect that to happen. I fully expect, like I said, Max quelled my concerns about his candidacy, and I have no reason to suspect anything would change from now until November. So that's why, at this moment in time, Max Engling has my endorsement for Indiana Secretary of State. one of the things I talked to him about was, what are we going to do to kind of clean up the office, right? Both Ballard and Bai have talked a lot about doing an independent audit or something along those lines. And Max, he gave an answer that was actually, I hadn't really thought about it. It is a good point. No one is really going to be strictly independent when doing something like that. People are always going to find what they want to find, and that's a good point. So, and he told me, he's like, I'm not going to be engaging in the activities of Diego, like giving the brother-in-law 6-figure job. He told me, he's like, I'm not doing that. He looked me in the eye when he told me that, which that's the whole time, he listened intently to my concerns, looked me in the eye when he answered, shook my hand and all that. That's all stuff I respect. And since, Max hasn't given me any personal reason not to take his word, I take him at his word. Once he gives me a reason not to trust his word, then I won't. But as of right now, he's not giving me any reason to not trust his word, so that's why I take him for it. But yeah, so, Max is a really easy guy to talk to. Like I said, nice guy, listened to me, answered my questions, and I appreciated that. So, the one thing I disagree with him on, the problem I had with him was never his political positions. Most of those I agreed with. It was just is he just going to be more of the same of Diego, or is he actually going to be different? That was my main concern, and that's what he, I don't have that concern anymore after, meeting with him. But one thing I do disagree with him on is, closing the primaries. I still don't really have, I haven't decided, I guess, what my view on it is, and I was talking with him about it, and he kind of agreed, is that there's so many, doesn't really feel like there's a right way to go about it, because there's very good arguments for all, sides of the spectrum, and he has his view where he thinks it should be the club's choosing, and it should be a closed primary, and that's fine, that's his view. I think differently, just because in a county like mine where there's hardly any Democrats around that are going to run for something, the only competitive race is to actually choose who the person's going to be when it's, when there's actually a race with competition is the Republican primary. And, if it's closed, the Democrat is not going to have any say. Now, obviously, could you say, tell the Democrats to run somebody? Sure, obviously, but that's just not going to happen. And, the same can be said in, Marion County, right, for the Republicans. So, that's where I come at it. He comes at it from his, we do disagree on that a little bit, but at the end of the day, that's one thing we disagree on. We agree on plenty of other things, obviously making sure it's only citizens voting in our elections, voter ID, obviously. And I love his idea about making the ID a different color, so that way it's easy for the people at the voting booth to see that. I think that's a great idea. The fact that he's actually looking into these shell trucking companies, I think it's very good that he's looking into that. Most people, that's one thing I'll say about Shelton. I was a big Shelton guy. He probably, because his thing was all about his experience in the elections. He didn't talk as much about some of the other aspects of it, so I don't know if Shelton would have been talking about that. Maybe, I don't know. But this is something I don't know if Shelton would have been talking about, and I appreciate that Engling is talking about it. So, that's pretty much where I come from on that. And I think that's about all I have to. I did get to meet Todd Rokita, the Attorney General, at the event, which was nice. It was pretty cool. Like I said, it's cool for me just to be able to meet new people, especially people high up in Indiana politics, right? But so yeah, back on Engling. I get the concerns people have for Engling. I had a lot of those same concerns, but actually meeting with the guy and actually talking with the guy about it, like I said, he's done a good job to quell those concerns. And at the end of the day, I'm to the point now we have to stop the Democrats from getting any power. Past week or so on Twitter, it's just, I was never a Democrat, and I always knew that they were the nuts party, but it's just the fact that, especially for me, when it comes to abortion, the Democratic Party is just so nuts on that particular issue, and then also damn near every other issue, that I'm just to the point that my whole thing for the longest time is I'm not going to vote for a Republican just because they're the Republican. If they're a shitty Republican, I'll vote for someone else. And in most situations, the other option is, the Democrat. Obviously, for Secretary of State, we have a few different options, or a couple different options in Schillings and Ballard, but obviously in most races, it's going to be the Democrat. I'm to the point now where it's like, no, the Democrat Party is just so nuts. As many problems as I might have with the Republican Party, the solution isn't to just elect the Democrats, because that's going to make it worse. A lot of people say that, we got to make the Republicans lose so they get better. No, that's not going to work. That's just not going to work, because then the Democrats are going to be in power, and they're just going to put us all the way to socialism. Listen, I hate MAGA and I hate socialism, but if I have to pick between MAGA and socialism, I'm taking MAGA every day of the week and twice on Sunday. That's just the way it is. So, and even when it comes to a guy like Bo Biden, a lot of Republicans say, Bo Biden, even though publicly he's a centrist, privately he's as far lefty. I don't know how they would know that. The few times me and Bo have DM'd on Instagram, which has been a long time ago, he told me he's not a partisan guy. He's much more of a, I don't know if he said centrist, but that's basically what he was talking about. Again, I take it at his word. We're both Marines. I take him at his word for that. But even if he is more of a centrist, it's just the fact that the party, the institution of the Democratic Party, is just, they're embracing socialism way too much for my liking, and I'm to the point I'm going to do everything I can to make sure they lose in November. So I probably will be voting a straight Republican ticket. Now, I won't hit the button straight ticket. I'm going to go through every single race and actually select the person I'm voting for, but it most likely will be, a Republican on every single race. And my endorsements for other races that, are, around me and stuff, like other county races and stuff, my endorsements will probably most likely be Republican. I just don't see. There's one race that I can maybe see myself still endorsing a Democrat, and that's the Jennings County Sheriff race. But even that, I'm really leaning to at this point still. And see, that is like, because Gary Driver was a fine sheriff when he was there, I feel like, and with Sheriff Kenny Freeman getting arrested and Chief Deputy Cody Lau being so close to him, it's kind of like the same thing with Jamie Nolan and Scotty Maples. I just don't know if I feel comfortable giving the reins to Lau, but like I said, I'm to the point the Democratic Party in itself is so freaking nuts that they need to be that's why I'm to the point now. I'm about 60% sure that I'm going to be endorsing Lau when the time comes. Or like y'all, people who follow me know how much I'm not a fan of Houchin. I'll tell you right now, at this moment, Houchin's going to get my vote, just because I don't want, even though I know Brad Meyer's not going to win, I don't want to do anything that could possibly help Brad Meyer win. Even though he's a nice guy when I met him, but he's just too far left for me. And like I said, we just can't let the Democrats win. We just can't. And Houchin's, getting more in my favor a little bit by trying to help keep the Big Oaks National Wildlife Refuge afloat. So I appreciate that. So anyway, that's where I am with Max Engling. That's why Max Engling has my support, and that's why, I now have one of these I Back Max buttons, and I'll try to put that up right there. You can see I've got I signed the Ballard petition, I've got a John Rush Show button, and I've got a Dave Shelton button up there. I'll probably put the I Back Max one up above that. I've got a few more buttons around here that I might, I got a Rust for Senate one right here. I used to have that up where the John Rush Show one is now, but I'll probably put that up there as well, because obviously, I still am a Russ supporter. I mean, come on. John Russ is my guy. But anyway, that's where I'm at with that, and that's why, because I actually got to meet the guy and actually discuss my concerns. I now back Max. And like I said, could it change? Sure. Like I said, I still very much like Greg Ballard. I wouldn't have a problem voting for him. If this was Diego still in the race, I probably would be. I would almost 100% be voting Greg Ballard. Just because I don't think there's nothing Diego could say that could, you know. Speaking of Diego, I was dude, this is nuts. On the Rob Kendall show, Diego is still getting donations after he lost the convention. Now, what's up with that? And they're almost all from out of state. Like, one lady from Texas gave like 4 donations of like $10 after he lost. The freaking, what was it? Nebraska Secretary of State gave like $5,000 after he lost. Like, dude, what? I think that needs to be looked into more. I really do. Anyway, that was a side note. Oh, Jesus. I'm 20 years old. I'm going to be 21 in like 6 days. How's my voice still cracking? Jesus. Anyway, let's move on to the Faust event. So, the day after that, and I'd known about this for a while ago, and funnily enough, Josh Young also invited me to this. There was a fundraiser for Philip Faust, the candidate for Marion County prosecutor. And Ryan Mears is a fucking dumbass. He's an idiot. That's all that needs to be said about that. You know, I want to do everything in my power to help beat him. And Philip Faust, he's actually a very extremely qualified candidate for prosecutor. And also Todd Young was going to be at that event, and I wanted to meet Todd Young. So that's why I had no problem going. I will say, I like the Engling event just a tad bit better, mainly just because the Engling event was a little bit more casual. That Faust event, that was very formal. I mean, it was in the Columbia Club. I mean, this was like this was like a freaking 15-star like hotel or whatever. We was on the 10th floor. I mean, this thing is fancy as hell, and it was awesome looking. But you know, I'm too much of a redneck for that shit. But no, it was a very fun event. Faust is a great guy. Got to talk to him. Made a great speech. Got to meet Todd Young. That was awesome. We got to talk Marine Corps stuff. It was really cool. Got a picture with Todd Young. That was awesome. Todd Young's an awesome guy. Awesome senator. You know, Rob Kendall talks a lot about, we have problems with Todd Young. You know, he loves to spend. He's the Duke of Spendingburg. But the fact that he's been one of the most vocal guys about making sure members of Congress shouldn't be able to trade stocks, that is a very good thing. And I'm glad and thankful that Todd Young is taking a stand on that. Anyway, finally got to meet Josh Young in person at the Faust fundraiser, which was really fun. Got to meet Patrick McCauley, the congressional candidate for District 6, which is basically Indianapolis. He's a great guy. I really think if we could get Patrick McCauley in there, if we could get Philip Faust in there, and if we could get Tom Vaughn, who's the Republican candidate for sheriff in Marion County, it's like Indianapolis it'd be looking pretty. I'll tell you what, it'd be looking real good. Now, obviously, is it probably going to happen? No. The chances of it low? Yes. But you got to at least try. If you don't try, you ain't got no shot. But if you try, you have as good of a shot as you give yourself. So, and I think we've got great candidates. Tom Vaughn is a great candidate for sheriff. Philip Faust is a great candidate for prosecutor. And Patrick McCauley, I think, is a great candidate for Congress. So, that's where I am on that. But yeah, I had a lot of fun at the Faust event, too. Like I said, I got to meet a lot of people there. But it was a little bit too formal and a little bit too city-fied for my liking. The Engling event was definitely a lot more casual of an event, and it definitely was. I felt a lot more in my element there than I did at the Faust event. But if I go to more of these things, I might get better at that. So, anyway, I guess that's about it, because that would have been Thursday, and then Friday was my rest day. Thank God. But I had a busy week driving to Indianapolis 3 days in a row. I was pretty tired by the end of that. But so I think that's all the statewide stuff I want to talk about. Now I want to talk about some local stuff. This is insane. Let me pull up the Madison Courier. Ugh, Jesus, I can't speak. The Madison Courier article about this. Jennings County scammed out of $500,000. Attorney says suspect switched legitimate vendors' banking information. This is nuts. Take one more drink of water. Alrighty, here goes. An investigation is underway into how Jennings County government was apparently scammed out of $500,000 by someone posing as a legitimate county vendor, according to a statement released by Jennings County Attorney Alex Zimmerman. The county auditor's office was notified late last month that one of its vendors, Dave O'Mara Contractor Incorporated, had not received payment of an invoice for work the company performed, according to Zimmerman's statement. An initial investigation revealed that an unknown person, allegedly representing the contractor, had submitted a request to the county auditor to change Automated Clearinghouse ACH information for processing the payment to Dave O'Mara Contractor Incorporated. The change was processed by the auditor's office on June 1. On June 10, a payment in the amount of $498,724.13 was paid to Dave O'Mara Contractor Incorporated, pursuant to an approved claim. However, that payment was later determined to have been paid to a fraudulent account. The county regrets that a failure of internal controls delayed payment to a valued partner in Dave O'Mara Contractor Incorporated, Zimmerman said in his statement. Jennings County is working with state and federal law enforcement agencies to recover the funds that were fraudulently paid. Jennings County Council, in coordination with Jennings County Commissioners and the county auditor, have made the full payment of the invoice to Dave O'Mara Contractor Incorporated, according to his statement. County officials said there will be no further comment on the incident due to the ongoing investigation. So, Jennings County got scammed out of about $500,000. My question is, who's going to be the one paying for that? I mean, they paid $500,000 to the fraudulent account, then they had to pay $500,000 Dave O'Mara. So now they're out $1 million. Obviously, $500,000 was meant to be anyway, but they said they're going to try to recover the funds. I feel like the chances of recovering all of those funds low. So who's going to be paying for that? The taxpayer? I don't know. I'm genuinely asking because I don't know in that situation. If it is a taxpayer, that's bullshit. Like, who's going to be held accountable for that? Who's getting fired? Someone needs to get fired. I hate to say that, but shit. It ain't like this was just like $500, $100, $1,000. Any of those, yeah, it's still rough. But I mean, whatever. This is $500,000 we're talking about. Jesus. And speaking of Jennings County, I seen that Mr. Beast was, I guess, filming in the Muscatatuck Urban Training Center this past week, so that's cool. It's kind of neat that, our local area is, becoming more, not well known, but getting more exposure. I mean, you got Kat Von D down in VV who just opened up her own store, Von D Land, which is kind of cool. You've obviously got John Schneider, Bo Duke down in Madison, which helps bring that place some exposure. And then you got Mr. Beast filming in Butlerville, which is, where the Muscatatuck Urban Training Center is located. It was kind of neat. Now, I must say, it is kind of neat. But anyway, coming up on a half hour, I always want these things to be about a half hour because I don't want them to be too long, but it's crazy how a lot of times it ends up being about it. Like, I must be better at this whole podcast or talk show thing than I thought I was, because I mean, every time I do this, it comes out to around a half hour every time I'm about done. But let me go through my checklist, make sure I've talked about everything. I've talked about Senator Graham, the main Senate, then the Ballard event, Engling event, Faust event, Marion County GOP, Jennings County getting scammed, Mr. B. So I think that's all I got to talk about. And the main reason I wanted to put this video out is to just kind of explain where I was with the Max Engling endorsement, because a lot of people, I was a big Max Engling, critic. Obviously I was a big, Dave Shelton guy. I know that's probably backwards, but whatever. I was a big Dave Shelton guy. During the convention, and then after Max won, I still had some reservations about him. But it wasn't like I was opposing this guy just for the fuck of it. I was like, this guy can, this guy can convince me to vote for him. There was just some fundamental things, I need to know. And had an opportunity to meet him. A lot of people was like, I'm surprised he come all the way up here. It's like, I've been clamoring for like, weeks now that, hey, I need to meet Max Engling, talk with him about some things, and I have an opportunity. If I pass that up, then I lose my right to complain about him. I got an opportunity to talk with him. I need to take that, and I did. And we had a great conversation. He even gave me his personal phone number that, he said I can, contact him anytime I want if I have concerns. He didn't have to do that. I'm just some redneck down in fucking southeast of Indiana. He didn't have to do that at all, but he did. And I appreciate that. Like I said, everybody's like, oh, he's just this, robot. Oh, he's just a Banks clone or this and that. He's like, you know what? If you haven't met him, okay, whatever. Maybe I can see where he comes from. But once you actually meet the guy, very personable guy to talk to. Very, very nice guy. I didn't have any problems with him. So, like I said, he didn't have to give me his phone number, but he did, and I appreciate that. One thing I almost forgot to mention, I also got to meet his brother, Dan Engling, which was pretty cool. Dan, he's also a very nice guy. So, yeah, that's another thing too. You can always tell how a person really is by how their family acts and all that. Dan was an awesome guy too. So, that is the concerns I had were very much quelled once I finally met Max and everything. So I'm very happy that I went to that event. But anyway, I don't want to. Now we're over a half an hour, so I don't want to ramble on for too long. I don't really have anything planned or expecting anything big to happen in the near future. And next week, or I guess this week, is the county 4-H fair in Ripley County, and I'm hoping to talk to some of the people in the local Republican Party to get more involved with the local party. Would very much like that, but that's about the only thing I'm looking forward to at the moment. So, John Rush Show came out yesterday. New episode. Highly recommend y'all to check that out. And yeah, that's about all I got. So, thank y'all for watching. If you enjoyed, click the like button. Excuse me. If you got anything to say, comment. Love to hear your thoughts and interact with y'all. And yeah, I hope y'all have a great rest of your day. And like I said, thank you for watching. See ya.